Hello, good people of YouTube, Mountbatten here, and today we are talking about the Tier 6 Premium German cruiser, the Graf Spee. Now, the Graf Spee is a real steel ship. The real Graf Spee was built in between the First and Second World Wars to be a ship that met the limits of the Treaty of Versailles, even though, of course, it overseeded that by about 6,000 tons. There was a 10,000 ton limit put on ships that Germany was to build, but of course the German government at that time, because I can't say the real name of it because YouTube doesn't like that, of course ignored that, and we got the Graf Spee, a cruiser hull mounted with battleship caliber guns, 6 283mm guns, the same guns that would be used on the Scharnhorst as well. Now, the Graf Spee in real life is probably best known for the Battle of the River Plate, and also doing some silly things like committing war crimes by pretending to be a British cruiser with a disguise that would make an excellent premium camo in game. Wargaming, if you're listening, that's, if you want to do that for a 6-year-old ship, let's do it. But of course, the Battle of the River Plate, where she took on the Ajax, the Achilles, and the Exeter, and the Exeter's in game, along with the Leander class as well. So pretty cool that we have those ships in game. Now, Graf Spee in game is a very old ship. She was introduced back in December of 2016, and she's been given away I don't know how many times for free at this point. I believe the last time she was given away for free was in the Dockyard event, very shortly before the Tier 6 season of Clan Battles. And the title of this video should be something along the lines of ship that's so bad, but so good, it got banned. And that's right, because of that season of Clan Battles, the Graf Spee was banned from the previous season of Tier 6 Clan Battles right off the bat. Why? Well, we'll talk about that in the Graf Spee here in a moment. So, in-game, the Graf Spee is, of course, still equipped with her 6 11-inch guns, which are very, very, very big guns for a cruiser to have in general, let alone at Tier 6. I mean, these are the same guns that the Johann de Witt have on it, and it's a Tier 10 cruiser. And the Graf Spee only has 3 less guns than the Johann de Witt. And the Graf Spee's guns honestly feel almost as accurate as the Johann de Witt's guns. Now, the Graf Spee, she is a very, very, very well-armored Tier 6 cruiser. She has a 16mm bow with a 19mm icebreaker bow, which for fighting other cruisers is very, very good. Her upper belt is 25mm, and her main belt is 100 millimeters. 100 meters. I wish it was 100 meters. So you have a pretty darn good belt for a cruiser. Now, to complement that, she also has 39,400 hit points. A lot of hit points for a Tier 6 cruiser. And 22% torpedo damage reduction, which really isn't bad, again, for a Tier 6 cruiser. Now, the armor, again, for fighting against cruisers is really, really, really good. For fighting against battleships, which at Tier 6, there's quite a few battleships. Well, actually, every battleship can go through your nose just about. But that main belt in the middle, that 25mm upper belt, that's very nice to have at Tier 6. Because if you know an angle, you can bait ships into shooting your midsection and bounce. Now, the guns it's really interesting, too, if you go read the old reviews back from 2016. It's pretty evident that this style of artillery is not very good on cruisers. Why? Because she has a small amount of large caliber guns for a cruiser at her tier, and they are not HE spammy guns, but just the way that they're set up, and again, this is a Graf Spee, it's a historical ship. If you're trying to make a ship based off of the real still historical Graf Spee, it unfortunately just doesn't work out very well in game, especially when it comes to the guns. Why? Because you have 6 guns, which is a very small number of guns to have on a cruiser, and they're in 2 turrets, one in the front, one in the back, and they have a 20-second reload time. Now, the guns are actually pretty darn accurate for Tier 6, and like I joked about earlier, they're almost as accurate as the Johann de Witt. In fact, sometimes I feel like the Graf Spee is more accurate than the Johann de Witt. Now, what the Johan de Witt does have going for is that she has a much faster reload time. The reload time in the Graf Spee, 20 seconds flat. Doesn't sound bad on paper, but when you're stuck with only 6 guns at tier 6, and they are accurate most of the times, but you do get the wonky bit of dispersion every now and then, it's quite frustrating. Now, the AP on this ship is very good. It has an 8400 maximum damage rating, comes out the barrels at 910 meters a second. Very fast AP, very punchy AP, German AP, very good AP. But the dispersion just leaves so much to be desired. While, yes, there are some very good salvos that come out of these guns, quite often you get some very frustrating salvos. And again, you only have 6 guns. 3 in the front, 3 in the back. So in order to get all 6 of your guns in the fight, you have to show your side. Now, the side of the Graf Spee is pretty tanky, and if you're paying attention, you can angle quickly and bounce most shells that will be fired at you. Most shells. But that being said, fighting against battleships, which is the main threat to your existence, is not very fun. Your bow and your stern, pretty much most of the battleships you see, will go straight through that. Unless you're seeing some failed division of like a tier 4 battleship. Just about every battleship you're going to see is just going to go through that armor like butter. But she has some things to counter that as well. Now, she does have a fair few secondary guns. She does have 6 of the 105mm guns, and she has 8 of the 150s. And it was kind of viable back in the day when we could build into secondaries on the Graf Spee to have a secondary Graf Spee, but not so much anymore, of course, since we can't do that at all. Now, she does have a lot of German features. In fact, almost every feature that you can get on a German boat is on the Graf Spee. You get torpedo tubes, 2x4 of the torps that go out to 8 kilometers. Pretty darn usable torpedoes right there. They travel at 65 knots. They do a maximum damage of 13,700. And they have pretty darn good firing angles from where they are mounted. But they are German torpedoes, so needless to say, in the moment you need them the most, they are more than likely going to get broken, as it does seem to happen to every single German ship. AA, 45 AA rating, not the best, not the worst. It's tier 6 ship. By tier 6 standards, it's okay-ish. But again, AA today, it largely depends upon the CV player, how well they are at dodging flak and such, unless you have some insane AA boat like an Austin or a Småland or a Holland or something like that. And at tier 6, Pensacola is the only real AA boat at tier 6, so it's not a knock against the Graf Spee that it has mediocre AA. Maneuverability of the ship is extremely slow, 29.9 knots with the speed flag. Without the speed flag, it's capped out at 28.5, I do believe. It's slow. She is very slow. Turning circle radius of 680 meters and rudder shift time of 10.3 seconds. And concealment with the captain skill gets you down to 11.5, which isn't terrible by tier 6 standards, but isn't great either. Now, where the ship does pick up a lot of brownie points is its consumables, like I mentioned. The ship has just about every bolt-on gimmick that the Germans get. So you get hydroacoustic search or your choice of DFAA. Your Hydra goes out to 5.5 kilometers. It's active for 110 seconds, reloads at 114 seconds, 4 charges with Superintendent. And you can also get your fighter, which is very nice to have, especially in a tier where double CV games are almost the norm now. So having a fighter is very useful. And you get a heal. You get 4 charges of a heal with Superintendent. You get 236 points of HP back per second. It's active for 28 seconds, reloads in 76 seconds, and again 4 charges with the Superintendent skill. Now, the Graf Spee. What is the ship very good at? The ship is very good at tanking against other cruisers. It's very good against other cruisers. But the thing is that good armor scheme against cruisers and decent against battleships if you know how to angle, and a 12v12 mode where there's multiple battleships, there's cruisers with much more faster firing guns than your 20-second reload time on your 283mm guns, to the point to where they don't really care if their guns aren't that accurate, and that's true for most cruisers. the accuracy on cruisers' guns doesn't really need to be that great if you're just throwing HE. And just about every cruiser in this game that has HE is a pretty good or at least decent HE spammer. They can always fall back on that ammunition type if their AP can't get through. Even more AP-centric ships like Petropavlovsk, because HE isn't great, but it'll get the job done if you need to fall back on it. The only real cruisers that don't do very well when we have to switch over to HE is something like the Siegfried, that again is a very AP focused cruiser, and of course throwing out the British cruisers that don't have HE, and the Graf Spee, the only two that really come to my mind that really can't at least perform okay with HE. Why? Because they have a small number of guns and not a very fast reload time. The Graf Spee, 20-second reload time on 6 guns. When you have to angle in to try and not get absolutely obliterated, you're preventing the smallest profile possible to the enemy team, especially when you get up tiered at tier 6, which this is a tier that gets up tiered quite a lot. You're now down to 3 shells. 3 shells that only have a 21% chance of causing a fire every 20 seconds. Couple that with the dispersion that you'll probably get. Now, again, the ship does actually have some pretty good dispersion, but RNG is what RNG is, and quite a few times you're going to hit 1, maybe 2 shells on target. If you were railing 3 shells on target every single time, I'd say it'd be workable, but in practice that doesn't happen. And if you want to get your 3 rear guns into the fight, then now you have to show your broadside. And again, you're probably up tiered if you're having to use HE and the Graf Spee. Now, when the Graf Spee is at tier 6, it's actually pretty decent, especially if you know how to aim. The accuracy is good enough to where if you know, like, hey, the upper belt of this ship, if it's a battleship, I can pin that, or if you're close enough to where you can pin the main battery belt. Of course, fighting against a lot of the tier 6 battleships, you can do that. Against tier 6 cruisers, if they do show you their broadside, then of course they're probably going to get blapped. And even when I was just recording for this video, just playing a couple matches in the Spee, that did happen a few times, and it is very satisfying when it happens. But again, you have to depend upon players just sailing out in front of you, broadside onto you, which at tier 6 isn't the most outlandish thing to happen. Heck, even at tier 10 now, there's plenty of cruisers that sail broadside and are surprised when they get clapped for it. But when that happens, and when the Graf Spee is at tier 6, it is okay. Being up tiered is where this ship really drops the ball, because again, it doesn't have good HE DPM to fall back on. Now, why was this ship banned from clan battles? Well, when they announced the tier 6 clan battle season, we had the choice of 1 CV, 1 battleship, or 2 battleships, and then the rest a combination of cruisers and destroyers. Well, at tier 6, there's not a lot of tanky cruisers. There's a couple of cruisers with super heals that, like the, what was it, the London? I think this was the only useful thing the London's ever had in its life was this season of clan battles. Or the Graf Spee. Now, like I said, the armor is fantastic against other cruisers. Now, it does have battleship burn time, unfortunately, and with how HE spam the game's gotten, that is, of course, quite bad. But in a game mode like clan battles, where it's very team-oriented, you're probably all on comms and communicating, having a ship like the Graf Spee with a heal, with a large hit pool, and with armor that you can basically tank for days against other cruisers, and guns that are very useful against other cruisers, the meta quickly devolved into 1 CV, usually something like an Ark Royal, 1 battleship, something like a Mutsu, perhaps, or a Warspite, and then the rest were Graf Spees. And that's what that season of clan battles became. Or you had the rolling smoke meta, where you had 1 CV, 1 BB, and then a combination of, was it the Hisyang and the Perth, or the, what is that, the Pan-Asian Perth. But that's essentially what the meta for that season devolved into. So, ironically, the Graf Spee was outright just banned altogether. But you can still take Perth and, what was it, the Hisyang? I cannot remember. The Huang He, that is the Pan-Asian Perth. So, she was banned from that because she was too good at her job, unfortunately. Now, the Graf Spee has since been removed from sale. You can no longer buy it, but there's a very good chance that if you are watching this video and you were around for at least the last year or so, you probably got it. They gave her away for, they gave her away for a series of combat missions. They gave her away for a campaign back when they used to do a lot of those, and they gave her away for the Doctor, and that's just the past 3 times that I can remember her being given away. And there's a very good chance that if you participated in the Center Container event, you probably got a Graf Spee as well, since it was a tier 6 premium ship, and those are the more likely ones to be given away to you. Now, the best way to play this ship in 2022 is play it as a mid-range cruiser. You want to be not chilling in the back with your battleships, maybe a little bit in front of them, and let the actual cruisers and destroyers go in the front first. Let them do the spotting. Use your 6 283mm guns just to find those cruisers that are being a little bit too cheeky and blap them. And it is very good at doing that. Against other battleships that you might find, especially tier 6 battleships, you can pin their upper belt pretty regularly, and if they give you a perfectly flat broadside and it's something like a lighter armored battleship, especially like the British battleships, you can chunk their belts pretty decently as well. These are 11-inch guns with German AP and very good velocities. Now, against some of the Soviet ones, it's a bit more of a toss-up, but I mean, if you know where their weaknesses are, you can definitely make use of that, because again, the guns are accurate enough to where you can kind of persuade them to hit one part of the ship. But the way RNG is, it's very frustrating when you get those bad rolls and you lose a shell or two, because that's just going to drop your damage down that much more. But against most tier 6 battleships, you should have no problems chunking their upper belt for about 2 to 4k a salvo, which isn't bad in the Graf Spee. It's just that it's only every 20 seconds. The way a lot of matches go now, they end so freaking fast that before you really can get your damage built up, the match is already over. Now, if you do get a good match that lasts quite a long time and you played it correctly, staying at medium range, don't go out charging in there. You do have torpedoes, but for the love of God, you're not a torpedo boat. Those torpedoes are like self-defense torpedoes, or if you have to push in, it's the last couple minutes of the game, then yes, that's the time to use your torpedoes, especially when you have to deal with a battleship or something. I guess most other cruisers, you should just be pushing their face in. Now, when you do get up tier to tier 8, this is the part of the video where I would say most other cruisers, just switch over to HE and burn the world down, do as much damage as you can. Fortunately, in the Graf Spee, that's not a very good option because of how, again, lackluster the HE output is on this ship. Now, of course, RNG could bless you, and for the round where you have to spam HE in the Graf Spee, you could do okay. But don't be afraid to switch to HE. Really don't, because, again, against some tier 8 battleships, that's just going to be your only option because of their armor scheme. But you shouldn't completely abandon AP either. On tier 8 battleships, you want to aim for the bow or the stern section, because at that point, with that 32mm plating, you should be able to pin that bow or stern pretty decently well. Again, with the range limit on the guns, because this is a tier 6 cruiser, her range is only at 16 kilometers, and unfortunately you can't hit equipped spotter to push that out any further. It's just, you gotta do what you gotta do. And at tier 8, your armor scheme that's pretty decent against tier 6 battleships is just going to get you chunked to death at tier 8. Which again is a big reason why you don't see a lot of Graf Spees being played, because the ship unfortunately up tiers terribly. But my best advice is stay at longer-ish range, try to use your AP, chunk their superstructure, aim for the stern, aim for the bow sections of the ships, and you should be okay. You're not going to be coming in top of the leaderboard, but you should still probably do at least 40 or 50,000 damage, which in a tier 6 ship like this, in the Graf Spee being double up tiered, that's fairly decent. In ideal situations with the Graf Spee, I'm able to do like 80,000-90,000 damage in a match that actually goes at least for a decent amount of time. I think both of the matches you probably watched here were only like 13 or 10 minutes, something like that. But anyway, guys, that's the Graf Spee. If you have one in port, let me know how you find her today and how successful you've been with her. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. On our way to 35,000 subs, and I can't thank you guys enough for that. Hope you're all having a wonderful Monday. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.